welcome back to the Inside Line on WIS Sports Radio, where we believe women in sport deserve equal coverage. The Inside Line is the only podcast focused on women's alpine ski racing, coming to you year-round from the World Cup circuit and beyond. The Inside Line is a co-production of Ski Racing Media and WIS Sports Radio, sponsored by Team Ski Safe. I'm your host, Gabbi Hall, and my guest co-host this week is Claire Brown, my wonderful coworker from Ski Racing Media, and we are coming to you from the Jeongseon Alpine Center in South Korea, about an hour and a half from Pyeongchang, the host of the 2018 Winter Olympic Games. And I'm so excited to have Claire on the show. Thank you for being here.
So excited to be here. Thanks, Gabbi.
Of course. And so I'm going to let Claire introduce herself a little bit since we have not had her on the show yet.
Sure. A quick snapshot on me. I grew up ski racing in Minnesota under Eric Seiler, a well-known name in the ski racing world. I went on to race at the University of Denver, and I've been working with ski racing for 7 years, and I'm now publisher of the publication. But here at the Olympics, I'm working for NBC as an associate producer. I'm acting as NBC analyst Steve Perino's assistant and really just helping him find stories, track people down, helping cameramen identify racers and frame different shots, and really just serving as a liaison between the editors, producers, and Steve to make sure the storylines are understood and communication is clear. But I really think the biggest challenge in my role is just helping Steve keep track of all his belongings.
And all the props for the start shots.
Yes, very prop-heavy role here. But it's been a great learning experience for me so far. Steve, he's a real pro. The amount of people he knows, the amount of information he collects, and his ability to whittle it down to something consumable for a 30-second hit at the top of the course it's so impressive. But this is my first Olympic experience, and I believe it's yours as well, Gabbi?
Definitely. And, learning a lot, just watching everything. I mean, I think the cool thing is to think that Perino worked at ski racing way back in the day. So there's just a lot to learn from the people doing this. And I'm here with NBC as well doing research. So definitely behind the scenes, but everything from building bios for the commentators to use so they know who the major players are and different statistics about them, to working on with the graphics team to confirm data and information. So it's been really interesting to see the behind the scenes functions of a broadcast, particularly something that's going from, South Korea to the United States. This is the first time NBC has broadcast alpine skiing live, and we can do that only because of the time differences, because it plays in prime time in the U.S. when it's morning here. So it's very cool to see how a live show goes down, especially something of this level and all the people behind it. But the strange thing here has been that we have not actually had much racing, and we got here February 4th, so we've been here about 10 days. A lot of false starts. We had a lot of getting up, production meeting, sitting, waiting, wishing for a race to happen. Not a single women's race has happened so far. We've had one men's race in Alpine combined, which I think kind of got off by the skin of their teeth based on the wind that we saw in the slalom run. So Mother Nature has not been cooperating, but I've been lucky enough to be sitting in the broadcast truck on those really cold, windy days. But Claire is at the top of the hill with Perino, so I'm curious to hear what it's really like at the top of the hill.
Yes, it's been very consistently windy and cold. Yeah, we've had 2 postponements so far, pushing back both the women's GS and slalom, and I can attest that both were justified. I think we experienced consistent wind gusts at 40 miles per hour both days, and neither of those days would have been fair races if they would have gotten them off. And I don't think I've ever heard of a slalom being canceled for wind.
That's got to be a new thing.
Yeah.
Nothing I've ever done.
Yeah, it was a mess up there. But I really think we have to give FIS credit in that they're trying to make good decisions here. The Olympics only happen every 4 years, and they have tons of pressure to pull these races off, but they're trying to make it as fair as possible for the athletes. Right,
and there's only so much you can do when wind is gusting 40 miles an hour. Some athletes won't get wind, some athletes will, and then it can just be a very unfair situation, and also, unsafe if you're getting into speed and things like that. So It definitely seems like the right call. And so wind is the thing that's keeping the races from happening, but the athletes are dealing with other challenges, particularly because the snow is so different here than they typically see on the World Cup circuit. And I know you've talked to a few athletes, during inspection and things like that, about how they're trying to change the way they're setting up their skis so that they're just the right amount of, their edges are just the right amount of sharpness.
Right. Yeah. The snow is insanely aggressive, meaning it's very grippy. And they did inject the slope like a typical World Cup hill prep, but however, due to the wind levels, it's pulling all the moisture out of the snow. And what we're seeing, like you mentioned, is that the athletes are having a really difficult time figuring it out. I rode up the chair with Racy Stiegler today on Wednesday, and she said it's the most aggressive snow she's ever skied on, and that says a lot coming from a Jackson Hole girl. She said she's been here roughly a week training, and she's been trying to dial in her setup the entire time, and it's been really tricky snow to figure out. Too sharp of skis or too powerful, and just a slight detune it's not enough grip. And I've heard that both Michaela Schifrin and Petra Vlhova have been experiencing the same challenges. So I know all the athletes are trying to sort that out.
And I think it could be a game changer for a lot of those top athletes. I mean, when you're looking at the slalom race that's happening, I think Michaela Schifrin is obviously the heavy favorite. She's been so dominant in slalom since Sochi, really. But, Petra Vlhova of Slovakia has beat her before. And Frida Hansdotter and Vendi Holdner are both medal contenders. And so when you talk about, they're all kind of at a very similar skill level. They all have the potential to be there. I think your equipment can really make all the difference. So I think that'll be something to watch, particularly in the post-race interviews as they discuss, challenges or successes that they had throughout these races. But, beyond the equipment and beyond the wind, the athletes don't have any control over the schedule and the way that the schedule has become crunched while we're here. I mean, now we're looking at women's GS, women's slalom, women's Super G, 3 days in a row of racing. And when you talk about someone like Michaela Schifrin, who has this absolutely stacked schedule, is hoping to walk away with medals in multiple events, it's grueling. It's emotionally exhausting. I mean, there's a lot going on there. And I know you had an opportunity to talk with her coach.
Yep. I definitely think Michaela's feeling this crunch more than anyone. I rode up the gondola with her coach, Mike Day, on Wednesday, and he said this start-stop has been extremely exhausting for her. And Michaela is someone that requires a lot of repetition, and for her to be switching back and forth this week between events has just been a huge challenge. She is somebody that, she's a creature of habit. She wants to be on snow all the time. She's not a Bodie Miller that can just get off the couch and go win a ski race. She needs daily touches on the snow. When they canceled the GS earlier this week, every single athlete was downloading the gondola, and she was the only athlete to put her skis on just to go feel her skis under her feet. And I know it seems like, the shift in the schedule, that it's something that, all the athletes are dealing with. However, I don't, and Gabby, you can speak to this since you're the women's beat writer at Ski Racing, but there aren't really any other medal contenders in both GS and slalom. So I'm sure Federica Brignone and Tessa Worley are spending more time on their GS this week, and Petra Vlhova, Vendi Holdner, Frida Hansdotter are prepping more for the slalom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there would be hardly anyone who would disagree with you on that. I mean, certainly, someone like Vlhova is a top 10 competitor in both, obviously a medal threat in slalom, but I don't see Vlhova as, I think she would be a surprise podium at the GS. So it's much easier for those athletes to focus on the event where they feel like they can bring a medal home for their country. I mean, the reality is, World Cup, a top 10 can still be great because you still get those World Cup points towards a globe, those end of season rankings. But that's not the case at the Olympics. It's every 4 years and you walk away with a medal. So that top three is crucial. But, Michaela, her team is working on managing the schedule, but she also has a neat trick for sort of managing I'm calling it like the emotional waves that can come with like sitting around and twiddling your thumbs in the lodge waiting for a race that may or may not happen.
Right. Yep. I learned Wednesday that she is a world-class napper. She took 2 30-minute naps before the slalom race was even canceled. She was planning on training GS that afternoon, and I was told, in the lodge that she was able to get in 2 naps and that her camp is doing the best they can to keep her well-rested.
I really need to pick up that nap trick. I can hardly sleep on airplanes, let alone like in a busy ski lodge with a bunch of athletes.
But the good news is Steve and I ran into Sofia Goja on the day that the GS got canceled, and Michaela was training with the Italians earlier this week, and I guess those couple weeks off of training have proven to work out really well for Michaela. I guess she's skiing lights out GS right now, like better than she's ever skied. And Sophia quoted something like, Michaela's already got the gold locked up. Obviously, a lot can happen on race day, but I think we've seen with Michaela when she's on, she's on.
And that's, incredible here for somebody like Goja, who she hasn't done great in GS this season, but I think she'd be an outside medal contender based on her past results. So, when one of your competitors says something like that, I think it means a lot. So I think she's had this rest coming into the games after a tough few DNFs. She's obviously skiing really well. So hopefully she can handle the weight of the pressure. I think all eyes are on her from around the world. And I can't even imagine what's going on in her head. But we have the tech races scheduled for later this week. Keep your eye on skiracing.com for the full scoop. What Claire and I really want to get into are these women's speed races. They are scheduled to happen starting Saturday with the Super G at the Jeongseon Alpine Center. I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but this tech venue is about a half hour from here. It's called Yongpyeong. So Jeongseon is where we are staying, and it's a really cool venue, actually, but we are a little bit isolated.
Yeah, we're super isolated from the rest of the games, and there's also very little people out on the hill, so it's very different from a World Cup in that sense. The slope is pretty abandoned and only course workers and coaches out there. However, the access to the athletes has been amazing.
So cool.
We're staying at the same hotel as almost all the men's speed teams. I get to stand in the breakfast buffet line every morning with Axel Svindal, and I ran on the treadmill next to Beat Foyts and Matthias Meyer yesterday, even though I haven't really drummed up the courage to actually strike up a convo with any of them. It's still really cool.
Just awkward interactions as you're reaching for the eggs on the counter or something, or brushing elbows with them, but maybe some of their skiing abilities will rub off on me. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But the men will eventually leave this hotel. The speed venue, we expect to see the women coming in the next few days. And, the situation is very unique for an Olympic Games. Like we said, Claire and I, this is our first experience. And on the World Cup, this sometimes happens where you're staying at the same hotel as some of the athletes, so you are more likely to see them. But our coworkers here at the Olympics say this is a very unique situation. Oftentimes, the media and the athletes are very separated in terms of where they're staying. So this is definitely unique for us, and we're enjoying every minute. And I think the other important note about this venue is this is not a ski resort. This was built specifically for the games. We are in the mountains. They cleared 58,000 trees were cut down to make this venue, reportedly. It had some environmental impacts that people weren't crazy about. This is a 500-year-old mountain forest. Some South Koreans consider it sacred. So there was a little controversy around that when this venue was being built. And so I'm going to link to an article below in the podcast so you guys can learn a little bit more about that. But the venue is here. They are ready to race. And I think we're in for something really interesting here. But it's a unique video. I mean, I think it's not as challenging as some of the other World Cup venues we've seen. With the men, a lot of them have talked about it being a little bit of a boring... It's not Kitzbühel or Wengen,
right? Yeah, the pucker factor isn't exactly there. But what's interesting, I think it's an easy hill to make it down, but it's not an easy hill to be fast on. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the men's downhill shakes out. But another fun character that we've been able to eat breakfast with and shoot it at the bar with that night is Tom Johnson, the creator of this course, Cowboy. He's shared some interesting stories about his experience the past couple of years developing this course. And it's just been really cool to hear it right from him. And he's just very respected by all the athletes and everyone in the ski racing world.
Yeah, so this guy's from Wyoming, and he basically runs all the snowcats. So they build the jumps, build the terrain. And I think what's cool about this venue actually is men and women run the same course. The start gate will be in slightly different locations, but it's the same course. And so it'll be interesting to see, how men and women handle that terrain differently. But I expect to see really cool things from the women. And on that note, Claire and I want to offer up our picks for the top three in case you're, playing fantasy ski racer or have a pool going with your friends. We'll offer our unasked for opinions on who's going to get in the top three, starting with the Super G race. So Claire, who are you picking for the podium in the Super G?
So for the podium in the Super G, I'm going to go with Lindsay for the win. I think she's got some momentum right now, and she's really hungry for medals. Sophia Gauja in second, and Nikki Schmidhofer in third.
Ooh, okay.
My dark horse, Federica Brignone. I think she's just an outstanding Super G skier, and if there's a time for her to medal, I think it's now.
Definitely, and she's had some great successes lately in speed. So I have similar players in different order, but I think my winner is going to be Tina Weirater. She was the 2017 Globe winner in Super G. She didn't do amazing here at the test events, but I just have a lot of confidence in her. I think she's going to do something really amazing here. So I have her for the win. Sophia Gauja, I have her in silver like you do. You guys probably know, if you're regular listeners, I had her on as a guest really early in the podcast. So if you want to get to know her, go listen to that. I'll put a link below the podcast. And then I have LV in bronze. I think she'll get on the podium. I think she's skiing fast, but I think she's more likely to win in the downhill later in the week. So I have her in third. And then my dark horse is Jasmine Fleury. She's from Switzerland, won her first World Cup this year. I don't think anyone else probably thinks of her necessarily as a dark horse for the podium, but I think she did really well here. She had like a 5th and a 6th place finish in the test events. She's won her first World Cup this season, so I think she might do something.
You never know.
Exactly. Anything can happen at the Olympic Games. People come out of nowhere. So I'm optimistic about that. And I'm going to do one final teaser before we hop into the downhill, because my winner pick, Tina Weirater, has agreed to do an interview with me. Whoop, whoop. So I will have her on the show in the coming week. And so keep your eyes out for that episode. She's awesome. She's got this great Olympic family legacy. She's from a tiny country of Liechtenstein that's you can drive across in probably a half hour or so. So she will be a very interesting conversation that I am excited to share with you. And hopefully we'll have some exciting news to talk about with a medal. But Claire, I think you might be more excited for the downhill.
Yeah,
Super
definitely.
G.
I just think we've seen some great competition and rivalry going on in these final downhills at Garmisch leading into the Olympics. With Lindsay winning both of those, Gauja nipping at her heels. It was really awesome to watch. They have this fun kind of banter back and forth. And Gauja, actually, when we saw her in the gondola just earlier this week, she's like, I'm going out for the Speed Queen. It's on. So
I love it.
It should be fun to watch.
She's such a character. She's great. And, actually in the test events last year, I know Vaughn won these most recent downhills, but in the test events here at Jeongseon, Gauja won. It was her first World Cup win. And then Vaughn was second. And so Sophia knows she can win on this hill. So I feel like that might give her the extra confidence. But for my picks, I still have LV taking the win. I think she has the most experience. And then, obviously won the downhill gold in 2010, missed Sochi because of injury. So I think 8 years later, she's so hungry to get that win again. I think she's going to pull something out. But I do have Sophia Gauja in silver again. And then Connie Hoder of Austria in third. I think they'll do well. My dark horse is Lauren Ross, because she did well here in the test events. But she's coming back from injury, so she could be a bit more of a long shot.
Yeah, definitely. I think I have Lindsay claiming gold as well. I know her body's not 100% this season with that crash after Lake Louise, but I mean, she is a gamer. She has had her eyes set on these games forever, or for the last, I guess, 4 years. 4
years since she was injured at Sochi. But her coach said, and I'll put a link to this ESPN article below the podcast, but this ESPN article, her coach said that her body's at about 50 or 60% of what it once was when she was at full health. So if that's really the case, she's still winning at 50 to 60%, which I think is insanely impressive.
Yeah, and she'll leave it all out there.
Yeah.
She's willing to risk it.
I believe she said she's going to eat it or win. So that'll be interesting. And then who do you have in second and third?
I have Gauja in second. I think it'll be close, like we've been seeing recently. And then I have Schifrin in third, assuming she races. And I really think she'd be silly not to on this course.
Yeah, it seems like a very doable course for her. And as we saw in Steve Perino's report a few days ago, she's been utilizing the 360 video technology to get more accustomed to the course. So I'll be curious if we hear from her on that at all in the coming interviews, and just how she's feeling on the course. But after the downhill, I think the Alpine combined, which will be after that, will be where she's, I think, could pretty easily, easily isn't quite the right word, but she's so fast in slalom. I think she could easily win the Alpine combined, which is a run of downhill and a run of slalom, given how she's skiing this season. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Schifrin on top. We've seen her have pace and downhill, and her slalom skiing right now looks just as insane as her GS skiing. I saw her warming up before the slalom race today, and it was just impressive. I saw Volova go down the course before her, and I was like, wow, that was really good. And then Michaela came down, and it's incredible. I mean, obviously we watch her on, from afar all season long, but seeing it in person kind of gave me a whole different perspective. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard not to go with her. And I've got Brignone coming in at second, and Winnie Holdner at third. And I just don't think a speed skier will be on the podium based on the way the men's race played it out. So those are my three.
Yeah, I have Winnie Holdner on the podium too, but she's the reigning world champion, so I think she's going to go silver. And then I think her teammate from Switzerland, Michelle Giesing, is going to go bronze. So that's how I see it panning out. But like we said, anything can happen, and with these wind variables, that they're supposed to get better, but you just never know. We could see a lot of things happening. And then the whole Olympics will close out with the premiere of the team event at the Olympic Games. The team event is a parallel slalom side by side, and each country can have a team of 4, 2 men, 2 women, and they go head to head in these rounds of elimination. And I think while people like Marcel Hirscher have said, they wouldn't necessarily value a team event medal the way that they value an individual medal, I think for spectators, and I think probably for the athletes too, it's a good way to end the games.
Yeah, I think it's super fun. We rarely see men and women racing together, and just the camaraderie, and it's just a fun way to close the games. And I think when you think about Michael Phelps, a handful of his medals are team event medals, so
a gold is a gold.
Gold's a gold.
You walk away, so that'll be exciting. And that kind of wraps up this episode, our analysis of what's been happening here in South Korea. We are hoping to have races in the next couple days. Forecast looks good for wind, so we're sending positive vibes into the universe that we're going to have some Olympic racing here today, and the schedule doesn't get any more condensed. Claire, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Gabby.
Of course. So if you guys are loving this podcast, The Inside Line, please leave a 5-star review on WIS Sports Radio on iTunes. I also welcome absolutely any ideas for guests or issues that you'd like to see me talk about on the podcast. Feel free to leave a comment. Tweet me at Hall_Gabby. Find me on Facebook. I am totally open to suggestions. More episodes of The Inside Line can be found on wisports.com, skiracing.com, and on any podcast players that you use. Just search for WIS Sports Radio. With over 760 episodes across 30 unique shows and a global audience of 1.5 million, WIS Sports Radio is the world's largest network of podcasts for women's sport. For more conversations from the world of women's sport, visit wisports.com. Follow us on social media at WIS Sports or at Ski Racing Media. We look forward to hearing from you. Like I said, please send your suggestions. The next time you hear from me will be after, hopefully, some more Women's World Cup races where Claire and I will break down what's happened. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.